In last Sunday's video, we discussed the Dead Three's ascension to godhood, and several times you may have heard me mention names of locations that you may not be that familiar with. So in today's video, the second video in this weekly Sunday lore series leading us up to Baldur's Gate 3, I'd like to discuss the setting that BG3 takes place in. I want to give a special thank you to all channel members and patrons of over 2 years. That is incredible support, and thank you so much. Let's jump right into it. Baldur's Gate 3 takes place in the Forgotten Realms setting, which is a setting that is used in many Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. It's used in countless video games, primarily in the RPG genre, mostly CRPGs, but also ARPGs and even MMOs. Several authors have written numerous books using this setting, including, of course, the creator of the Forgotten Realms himself, Ed Greenwood. And even the recently released Honor Among Thieves movie took place in the Forgotten Realms. The primary world in the Forgotten Realms is a planet called Toril, which exists within a solar system called the Realm Space, which is oftentimes referred to as the Sea of Night. You will hear terminology used like this in Baldur's Gate 3. The planet of Toril is the prime world of the Forgotten Realms setting. It's of course also where Baldur's Gate is located. Toril is the third planet from the sun, but before we zoom in on this planet, I should also mention that there are several different planes of existence in the Forgotten Realms setting. The Great Wheel is the current cosmological model used to visually display the different planes of existence. And you can see in the center of this wheel is the material plane, which is the plane that Toril and most of the other planets in the realm space are located in. I will do a video in the future going over some of these other planes of existence, as they do play a part in Baldur's Gate 3, but for this video let's focus in on the material plane. Toril is orbited by one moon called the Moon of Selûne, which is of course named after the goddess of the moon herself. And this moon is followed by a cluster of asteroids collectively referred to as the Tears of Selûne. There's actually quite a lot of activity going on these asteroids, including trading posts, a beholder base, a dwarven citadel. And when relating to Baldur's Gate 3 specifically, one of these asteroids is home to Kresh Kalir, also known as Stardock, which is a hatching and training grounds for young Githyanki. Toril is comprised of several different continents, but the primary continent used for most D&D settings, including BG3, is the continent of Faerun. The other continents are Kara-Tur, Zakara, Osi, Inkarom, Maztika, and Kadashaka. Now let's take a look at the continent of Faerun specifically, and the map that you guys can see right here was created by a D&D map maker named Johnovick. I will leave links to his Twitter, Patreon, and even his Redbubble store where you can purchase physical maps down below in the video description. Now Johnovick's map does a fantastic job highlighting the different nations and city-states across Faerun, which are otherwise quite hard to see on most other maps. The first area that I want to talk about is of course the Sword Coast area, which you can see on the western side of the continent, and the Sword Coast is home to many of the very important and popular Dungeons & Dragons cities, including our very own Baldur's Gate, and you'll be able to see Baldur's Gate right about here on the map where I am making a circle. Now most of Baldur's Gate 3 will likely take place between the cities of Baldur's Gate and Elturel, so in this general vicinity. Now before I zoom in even more and switch over to another map, I want to highlight some other notable nations that will be referenced or have already been referenced in Baldur's Gate 3. This blue highlighted area, which is directly east of Baldur's Gate, is the theocratic state of Elturgard, which was laid claim to by the city of Elturel. It's really close to the city of Baldur's Gate, and therefore, naturally, there are some geopolitical tensions. Now, to the south of Elturgard and Baldur's Gate, we have the nation of Amn, which is, of course, very important to the original Baldur's Gate games, specifically Baldur's Gate 2, because Baldur's Gate 2 actually takes place in the coastal city called Atkatla, which is in the nation of Amn. South of Amn, we have the nation of Tathir in the Whale Death Forest, which is also known as the Tathir Forest, which is home to the hidden elven city of Saldnesalar, which you get to visit in Baldur's Gate 2. South of Tathir, we have Kalimshan, which is home to the Kalim Desert and also the coastal city of Kalim Port. Now, in the outer city of Baldur's Gate, there's actually a section called Little Kalimshan, which is a reference to the nation of Kalimshan in the south. Now below this we have the Shining Sea, and there's not really too much that we need to talk about here, but the jungles of Chult, this green area right here, have already been referenced in Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access, and these jungles are home to all sorts of savage beasts and even dinosaurs. Now, pulling the map up and heading northeast, let me recenter ourselves back over the city of Baldur's Gate, which is right here. If we go directly east, this gigantic body of water is called the Sea of Fallen Stars. This is a really important body of water because it's bordered by so many really important nations. To the southeast of the Sea of Fallen Stars, we have this one nation called Timanther. Timanther is interesting because Timanther actually comes from a different planet, but more on that at the end of the video. Make sure to stick around for that part. And when Timanther was transferred to the planet of Toril, it brought with it the Dragonborn race. And this is how the Dragonborn race was introduced to the planet of Toril. And their capital city is called Timanchabar, I think. And that will definitely be referenced in BG3, especially when we get access to the Dragonborn race, which I'm fairly certain will be a playable race in the game. Heading north a bit, this nation that is highlighted in red is the Land of the Undead, the nation of Thay. And Thay is really important because Thay is ruled by Saz-Tam, the Lich King, who is referenced in BG3. And if you watched Honor Among Thieves, you actually got to see Saz-Tam in a few of the clips in the movie. And Saz-Tam is obviously really powerful and he wants to achieve world domination, so he will be referenced several times. And this is where he actually rules over. And this is also where the Red Wizards of Thay come from, which you will see in Baldur's Gate 3. North of Thay, this little green area is the nation of Rashamen. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because this is where Minsk and Boo are from. And Minsk has been confirmed to be a recruitable companion in BG3. All right, let's head out west back towards the Sword Coast, and we're going to pass by the magical desert nation of Anarok. And Anarok holds the remains of the once powerful Netherese Empire, which was comprised of several magical flying cities that ultimately came crashing down to the ground, and more on that in a future video. Now you'll notice on the top northern section of Faerun, it's all colored in white because this is the Arctic tundra, really cold area of the map. And the most notable area here is Icewind Dale, which is home to 10 towns, which are a loose confederation of frontier villages. There's been a lot of stories that took place in Icewind Dale, and I'm sure we'll hear about it in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, heading back south towards Baldur's Gate, we are going to pass the High Forest, which is this vast, dense, ancient forest home to many elves. And this place is a remnant of the days of old on Faerun when the continent used to be covered in green. And the last thing that I'll point out, and just so we can recenter ourselves, Baldur's Gate is right here. To the west of Baldur's Gate is the Moonshae Isles, which is a collection of islands out here on the trackless sea and on the Sea of Swords. Now, this map was done by a cartographer by the name of Sebastion, and I love this map not only because it's beautiful, but it's also extremely detailed, and it has a really high resolution, so we can zoom all the way in on the city of Baldur's Gate without it really even getting blurry. And I'll leave links to Sebastion's socials below in the video description. This map does not show the entirety of Faerun. As you'll notice, you can't really see the Sea of Fallen Stars or the nation of Thay, which we talked about earlier, but you will notice the Anarok Desert right here, Icewind Dale, the High Forest, which we talked about, the nation of Am, the Wheeldath Forest, which is the Tethir Forest, Kalimshan, and then even the jungles of Chult down here. You can see them just a little bit. We're going to start by zooming in on the city of Baldur's Gate. So Baldur's Gate not only is on the Sea of Swords, but it also is along the river Chianthar, which is the river that you basically start Baldur's Gate 1 early access on. And on Chianthar is also the city of Elturel. And in the previous map, we talked about the nation of Elturgard, which would be kind of in this general vicinity surrounding Elturel. South of the Chianthar River and Elturel and Baldur's Gate, we have two wooded areas, the Wood of Sharp Teeth and the Cloakwood Forest. The Wood of Sharp Teeth is actually known to have werewolves, and the Cloakwood Forest is a smaller ancient forest home to the Shadow Druids, which are a sect of radicalized druids. Now you guys will notice directly south of Baldur's Gate we have Candlekeep, the famous library fortress of the Sword Coast, and this is where you start your Baldur's Gate 1 journey. And in Baldur's Gate 1, you head to Baragost right here, you go south to the mining town of Nashkel, back up into the Cloakwood, and then into the city of Baldur's Gate. And then in Baldur's Gate 2, you actually start in the city of Atkatla right here, which is also south of Baldur's Gate and south of Candlekeep. And in Baldur's Gate 2, it even takes you as far south as the Wheeldath Forest, or the Tethir Forest, which is where that hidden city of Saldanesalar is, where, of course, the main antagonist of BG2, John Irenicus, hails from. Now, if I go further south, we're of course down into the Kalim Desert. I just want to quickly point out this road right here, which is called the Trade Way. And the Trade Way goes from Kalimport all the way up all the way through Nashkel, Baragost. Now we're back to Baldur's Gate, and then it continues to head north. It goes west or east just a little bit, but then it kind of veers back onto the coastline, and it will bring us to the famous, extremely large city of Waterdeep, also known as the City of Splendors. And this is actually the city that Gale in Baldur's Gate 3 is from. You're going to hear about Waterdeep all the time. I think even Elminster is supposed to be there, and Elminster is one of the most famous wizards in all of the Forgotten Realms setting. If we keep following the tradeway to the north, it's going to bring us to the city of Neverwinter, which is the Jewel of the North, and this is where the Honor Among Thieves movie takes place. And there's also several video games that take place there, and it's referenced in most D&D works as well. And then north of Neverwinter, it brings us to the northern city of Luskan, which is kind of on like the southern part of the Arctic tundra of Icewind Dale right here. And you will hear references to Luskan in most D&D video games. Now, pulling the map back down to Baldur's Gate, because I like to center ourselves on the city first. I think it's a lot easier to understand the map when we always return back to the city that Baldur's Gate 3 is, of course, based on. If we head up north again, but kind of stick a little bit to the west, not along the coast, we're going to pass a city called Yartar. And Yartar is the city in the intro cinematic where you see the Nautiloid ship zapping up all the people. Heading north of Yartar and above the High Forest is the Silver Marches area, and the capital city of this area is Silvery Moon, which is a magical, beautiful city that used to be ruled by Lady Illustrial, one of the most powerful wizards ever, and she's actually a chosen of the goddess of magic, Mystra. Now, Silvery Moon is known to be a great meeting place for races that are morally inclined towards being good. If you guys read the Legend of Drizzt book series, when Drizzt goes here as a drow, this is kind of like a really big moment in the books, and what becomes of that and how Drizzt changes the opinions of people in the area. It's a really beautiful story. Highly recommend reading the Legend of Drizzt book series. To the northwest of Silvery Moon, we have the Dwarven Kingdom of Mithril Hall, which was reclaimed by King Bruenor, and south of that, the Evermoors. That's actually an area that you see in Honor Among Thieves as well. It's kind of cool to point those out. And the last thing I'll point out here, for those of you guys that did read the Legend of Drizzt, just east of Citadel Felbar here in this mountain range, I'm pretty sure this is where Drizzt first emerges from the Underdark, and we're going to talk about the Underdark right now. There's two more quick topics I would like to touch on in this video, the first being that of the Underdark, which is a vast network of caverns and tunnels underneath the surface of Faerun. We already know that the Underdark is a location that contains a lot of content in BG3. The Underdark consists of 3 layers: the Upper Dark, which is the first 3 miles below the surface, the Middle Dark, which is 3 to 10 miles below the surface, and the Lower Dark is 10 or more miles beneath the surface. It's hard to find accurate maps that line up with other maps, but on this particular map, the city of Baldur's Gate would be right about here on the surface world. I do also want to point out a few notable Underdark locations. Right here is the Underdark drow city of Shamith, which is referenced in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's in the general vicinity of where BG3's Act 1 takes place. To the southeast of that is Orindal, the city of Lore Takers, which is a large Mind Flayer city-state located in the Lower Dark. The very well-known drow city of Menzo Baranzan, where Drizzt Do'Urden is from, is to the far north in the Upper Dark, and this city is actually quite close to the Deep Gnome capital city of Blingdenstone and the Dwergar capital of Gracklstugh. Not sure if I'm pronouncing those correctly. Now, I saved the topic of Abeir Toril for last, as it can get a little confusing here. The planet of Toril actually has a sibling planet called Abeir that lives in a pocket dimension. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the past, these two planets used to be one, and this planet was known as Abeir Toril, which you may hear referenced in Baldur's Gate 3. When the conflict between the gods of Abeir Toril and the primordials of Abeir Toril became too much, the overgod Ao sundered the planet into 2. He did this by creating the Tablets of Fate, which were powerful artifacts that maintained the balance between the forces of law and chaos. These tablets acted as a barrier between the world of Abeir and the world of Toril. Ao then gave the gods control of Toril and the primordials control of Abeir. These two planets remained separated for a very long time, but during an era known as the Era of Upheaval, which approximately took place from 1358 DR to 1482, these two planets began to merge. This was caused by the overgod Ao destroying the Tablets of Fate, which unraveled the laws of the realm space. During this era, pieces of land and even entire continents would end up transferring to their sibling planet, and this is actually how the Dragonborn race found their way onto the planet of Toril. The nation of Timanther, which we talked about earlier, was one of these pieces of land that was ripped from Abeir and found its way to Toril. Eventually, AO restored the tablets in 1482, which began the Second Sundering, and the two worlds were once again completely separated. And that'll be it for this Sunday's lore video. Like I'm going to continue to mention, I am shooting for a video every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern. I'll probably miss a Sunday here and there, all the way up to Baldur's Gate 3's release, so we can continue to establish that foundation of D&D lore knowledge, which is going to enhance our Baldur's Gate 3 experience. I'll see you guys on next Sunday's video. Thank you.